As you know, the UK left the EU political structures and the European Parliament on January 31st in 2020. And now a lot of Brexiteers blame the government for not implementing Brexit properly, and others want the UK to join the EU again. But the EU, of course, moved forward after Brexit, and so in the next weeks I will make a test here on the channel by bringing news about the EU in one of my daily videos. That's supposed to keep people informed what the UK has left and what happened after, and what people want to return to make informed decisions and give it a more fact-based approach. And since my magazine channel is reserved for information on the development of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine for the time being, it is another reason to do this on this channel here. But I anyway believe that exactly my audience on this channel needs this information. But let's talk about today's topic. It will be a lot about the German Chancellor at the same time. Because after Germany's yes to a controversial crisis mechanism, can the EU asylum reform finally be negotiated to a conclusion now? Well, the events of the past few days raise numerous questions, as well as in Brussels as in Berlin. However, what happens next will not only be decided in these two cities. But let's talk about what happened. What is the status of the EU asylum reform after Germany's yes to the so-called crisis regulation in the event of the arrival of an extremely large number of migrants now? The German federal government had expected that it could pave the way for important negotiations with the European Parliament by making concessions in the dispute over the crisis regulation and not block it anymore. Since this Friday at the latest, however, it has been clear that the hope was premature. According to diplomats, the German concessions do not go far enough for Italy in particular. Rome is also bothered by Germany's financing of civil sea rescue projects. In principle, the plans for the EU asylum reform provide for numerous additions and tightening measures in order to limit unwanted migration. In particular, there are plans to deal much harsher with people from countries that are considered, let's say, relatively safe. In the future, after crossing the border, they will be taken to strictly controlled reception centers under prison-like conditions. Normally, they would then be checked within 12 weeks whether the applicant has a chance of being granted asylum. If not, they should be sent back immediately. In addition, it should be ensured that some of the asylum seekers will be taken away from heavily burdened countries such as Italy and Greece in the future. Countries that do not want to accept refugees would be forced to make compensation payments. If Italy does not agree, why did Federal Interior Minister Nancy Faeser announce a political agreement on Thursday after this EU meeting? I didn't understand that. Faeser is currently not only Interior Minister, but also the top candidate for the Hess Social Democrats in the state elections on next Sunday. It is possible that she wanted to present a political success a few days before the election. However, it is also conceivable that she did not correctly assess the situation and Italy's concerns, which wouldn't talk in her favor. Faeser must now hope that some agreement can be reached in the next few days. It hasn't happened until I filmed this video. Developments at the EU's external borders are also putting pressure on us here in Germany. The number of asylum applications recorded by the EU recently rose to its highest half-yearly level since the refugee crisis of 2015-2016. According to the UN refugee agency UNHCR, 186,000 people had crossed the Mediterranean to Europe by September 24th of this year. According to UNHCR data, there were around 150,000 for the whole of last year. But is it true that the federal government has negotiated far-reaching changes to the plans for the crisis regulation? Well, EU officials who usually have a very sober view of the facts answer this question with a resounding no. Anyone who looks at the new text will see, for example, that a rule has been deleted that would have allowed EU countries to temporarily deviate from EU standards for material support services and access to medical care in the event of a large influx of people. In addition, applications for the protection of minors and their family members should be given priority, even in crisis situations. Stronger information and justification obligations are also planned for countries that want to make use of the regulation. However, the bottom line is that these changes are not substantial. The original text would also have stipulated that member states must cover the basic needs of applicants in areas such as food, clothing, adequate medical care and shelter, even in crisis situations. The German Greens had recently blocked the government's approval for weeks out of concern about an unacceptable lowering of protection standards. But why do they agree now? Leading Green politicians such as Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock justified the change of course on Thursday with the changes that have yet to take place. However, even Green members of the German parliament, the Bundestag, assume that Chancellor Olaf Scholz made informal use of his directive authority on Wednesday and ordered that resistance to the crisis regulation be given up. Julian Pahlke criticized that the Chancellor's decision to approve the regulation at any price only made improvements more difficult. But what does this mean now for the German Greens? They are in a dilemma on this topic. Right from the start, there was fundamental resistance at the grassroots level against the planned stricter asylum course that is being negotiated in the EU. The traffic light must not take part in this isolation policy. That was said by the federal spokesman for the Green Youth, Timon Tsienius, and he recently wrote this on X in connection with the negotiations in Brussels. He warned of even more chaos, suffering and misery at the external borders because people are being disenfranchised. As part of the government, top Green Party politicians are forced to make concessions, and this is a test for the party. But does this also apply to the traffic light coalition as a whole? Well, also for them, as with other topics, just have a look at child security or heating law. The dividing line runs primarily between the Greens and the Liberals. When it comes to migration, the Liberal FDP and their General Secretary Bijan Dir-Saray recently even accused the Greens of being a security risk for the country and of making consistent government action more difficult through unrealistic positions. And he now told the German newspaper Tagesspiegel, "I welcome the fact that the Chancellor has now made it clear to the Green coalition partner that the asylum transition must come." But what's interesting is what is the mood among the population on this subject. According to the current public television Germany trend, support for limiting the number of refugees has grown, as has general skepticism about immigration. 64% of those surveyed are in favor of Germany taking in fewer refugees. That's 12 points more than in May. And when asked whether Germany has advantages or disadvantages due to immigration, 64% answered more disadvantages. In May, only 54% said this, according to the survey by Infotest DIMAP. And so this is a very interesting topic. But I have, especially on this channel, to emphasize one point. The discussions within the EU and the solutions they are looking for and they are thinking about are all within international law. That's a different to certain other people thinking about different ways of handling immigration. But if you want to see another video right now, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.